We do not own the rights to anything or any music that's heard during the duration of this podcast. Also, a lot of these shows will have explicit content. So if you are not a fan of any cursing or profanity, you may want to walk away, but that does not mean that every show will consist of such. I know y'all tired of it, but we got a new season of The Past. Welcome to season 8, the Mamba Year. Podcast available on all platforms: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, all of your podcast platforms. Here you'll get a dose of content related to tech, the productivity world, and most importantly, how to be a better you. The theme for this year, personally, is receiving grace. And we definitely want to do better with receiving it and being open to being a better us from who we were a year ago. So this is season 8 of The Past, and I hope you all enjoy. What is up? What is going on? Episode 394 of The Past is here. I am your host, BT, and as always, yes, we have another episode, but this one is a little different because if you've been following the show or you know me and how I do my shows, you know this is the show that I always value doing the most. I love doing all my episodes. I love having everyone on as a guest. I love to talk about the various things that I talk about over the year. But there's always one show that sticks with me every single year, and that is the year in review. I'm still configuring to see if I may have a +1 for the year in review for a show, but I'm not going to force anything because I also know at the end of the day, I still got to record a podcast. So I wanted to take a little bit of time and unpack, discuss, address, bring forth, acknowledge, and be aware of what 2023 was about and where 2024 is taking not just myself, but also the podcast. I hope you all are doing well. I hope you all are in a very calming and soothing space. I will forewarn you that this is not your traditional podcast. I won't be talking about any specific topics of any sort. There's not really much of an outline. This will be the first year I'm taking a huge plunge on this podcast for a year in review and just kind of speaking about the year as a whole. A lot will be shared. A lot could possibly be omitted. But at the end of the day, I want to be sure that everyone who listens, tunes in, gathers information, gets something from this show. And I say that with the utmost of transparency and with the utmost of truth. If you've been keeping up with the show, it's been close to a month since I've last recorded. The last time I recorded a show, Outkast, and I'm saying Outkast, but I should be more correct. Andre 3000 dropped an album that caused a lot of feels, a lot of attention, a lot of misinterpretation. But we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about quite a bit on this show. And I'm making it my goal, as I always do, to not hold any punches. There has been quite an experience, to say the least, with season 7. Season 7 has been truly about just how a lot of things have come together. And it's like, dang, we got through a year, man. This was a year, to say the least, man. Like, a lot went on for a lot of people. A lot went on for myself. Between going through some promotions within work, as well as some adjustments and adversities within work, as well as some connections with many people. If you notice if you go back and really look at the cover arts for the podcast, there was quite a fair share of guests who came on the show. So I'm going to start there as we're about 5 minutes into the show. I'm looking at the timer that says 4, but of course, intro and outro might change that time. But nearing the 5-minute mark of the show, or passing it, whichever one, I want to take time to give thanks to a few people. And there probably are others, but the ones that I'm looking at based on my cover arts, I want to thank my sis, Tara, for coming on. We talked about business, kind of starting your business, the ups and downs of business. My boy Jarrell, Nishan, I think him coming on my show was almost like a kickstart to his podcast. And ironically, after he came on my show, he was on the show as I guess you could say a bystander for Sean, who came on the show. Ironically, I'm meeting with him soon to do some tech talk and kind of unpack and catch up. My BFF, Desi, she was on the show. Had a ball having her on the show. That was a very, very enjoyable podcast. And last and definitely not least, my twin Ramona bringing it home. Like we were overdue for a show in our 3-year, Nishan and I definitely, but Ramona and I, we did the show back in 2020, and we've been talking about, we're going to get back. We're going to do a show together. A lot of things happened. A lot of life happened, but we got a show back up and running. So Nishan was on episode 3. Well, let me backtrack. Tara was back in episode 371. Nishan was on episode 379. Sean was on 382. Desi was on 383. And Ramona was on episode 384. And I'm definitely by far appreciative of all of them being on the show. All of their words, all of their thoughts, all of their input was embraced. And I say all of that to say, if anyone is looking to join the show, please come on. I promise you it's not going to be as conflicting or as difficult as you might think it's going to be. It's going to be more of a safe space. Like anyone that has been on my show can tell you, you're here to just have fun and talk about who you are and what you do and just expressing your thoughts. And that's really what the podcast, that's been kind of my primary source or my primary goal in doing my podcast has been about, is just having people, I talk about what I talk about and share a lot of my thoughts, but also I want to get people to come in and give some input, give their perspective, give their experiences, and make it just an open dialogue. And I've really found how big of a deal that is and has become. Before I go any further, because I did dedicate an episode to my views. It's family has always and will always be one of my big talking points when you really hear, when you really break down or unpack the podcast in its entirety. I had 2 very unique workflow experiences for the year. One of them is going to be talked about heavily. The other one will be talked about heavily, but I will give it its cred because I still need to look at possibly fulfilling that option as well. So I started the year by being a part of a course for ITIL, which if you haven't really heard of it, it's kind of like a foundation learning breakdown for the IT/tech world. And it it definitely does not go unnoticed in my book, because it is a certification that not many people really have gone for. I want to make sure I get the proper name, because there's like a, let's see, blah, 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 IT certification, meaning it is the IT infrastructure library. And it's mainly a main staple point for being in IT. Many companies are recommending or suggesting that this be taken. And in all fairness, I'm glad that I took it and learned what I did from it when I did. I'm still looking to do the certification. I haven't taken the exam for it. It was quite a bit of information. I know the exam is proctored, so that's been a big factor. I know a couple folks from my team when I was in service desk who have gotten that certification. So I don't want to downplay or disregard that whatsoever. But that was one big staple in my workflow. The second one couldn't have been a month or so after learning the information for that exam. Even like I said, I haven't taken the exam, but I am looking to do the exam. But a month or so later, an opportunity came up, and I was able to take advantage of it. And I will admit, taking advantage of that opportunity or going into that opportunity made all the difference in the world, because it forced me to grow up in a way that I wasn't prepared to grow up. And that was to finally get myself in a position to start as an engineer, as a software engineer. As many of you may or may not be aware, I am currently a software engineer with my company. And I must admit, it has been a ride like no other before. I've worked different companies, I've worked different departments, I've learned quite my fair share. But this one was the one that's like, okay, I gotta operate a lot different. I gotta handle myself a lot different. I gotta understand what this is about. I need to take into consideration that this is way bigger than me. There are just so many things that I've had to take time and really look at and considering since taking on this role. But the best part about it is, if I didn't experience what I've experienced, I definitely would not be where I am right now. Something as small as valuing your time and knowing how to manage your time and prioritizing your time, it didn't make sense at first, but now as I'm maturing in this position and just maturing in life, it's really understandable, and it's really important to look at why you're, put in the position you're in to do what you're doing, and most importantly, doing it at a high level and not kind of sort of doing it or not having the passion or care in doing it, let alone realizing how your impact within a role can play a part in other people's roles. And at first, like I said, I didn't treat it with that care initially, but as time has progressed and as a lot of lessons have been taught, a lot of discussions have been had, I'm like, I gotta operate with this and know that I was put in this place or this position for a purpose, I'm not just here just to go through the motions. And I'm really seeing how important that is over time. And so by far, I'm definitely not taking this position for granted. I mentally and emotionally can't allow myself to take it for granted. So I just want to share that with you all and just how big of a deal that has become. I'm bringing that up, but also I guess I should talk about this too. This year was the first year in over 20 years of taking a flight. And it wasn't just taking a flight and going somewhere. It was being in a position to know that someone that you work for is able to know that you're in a position to be able to go out, represent, get information, learn quite a bit, do a fair share of networking, package something from what you've learned, and most of all, not deny or disregard what you were there for. Human error came in with some things on my end personally, but all in all, I definitely can say that I enjoy Afrotech very much so. I might have shared this before. I think I shared it during one of the Afrotech pods. But even more interesting in being near a podcast that I was wanting to, it was an event that was going on that I was hoping I would be able to attend. And there were quite a few people who ended up being able to go. And I probably could have still walked over there and just asked like, hey, y'all got extra space, and probably could have got in. But I say all that to say it was the most unique experience in seeing how people connect and where people connect, and folks allowing themselves to connect all played a big part in just the overall experience. And I don't have any regrets from that whatsoever. My birthday, of course, happened this year. There was a lot of reflecting as usual, a lot of awareness behind knowing that you're going to go through your changes with the people who have been there through things, and they're going to go through their changes, and you figure out where it all is intended to be, and you don't force it. You let it be what it is. And I think the biggest piece of that is being okay with it and not stressing the unknown. For a lot of people, the unknown can become stressful when it's not as stressful as we think it is. And lately, I've really honed in on finding those reflection points, finding those points to be aware of, like, hey, I dropped the ball. Hey, I didn't do this right. Hey, I could have did this better. Hey, this could have been handled differently. Like, just being more aware of the situations has been like the big staple point. This is a fresh show, but last week there was no way that I was going to be able to do a podcast and do what I ended up doing by going to or attending my first Christmas party with my company. That was an experience. Definitely had a good time. Definitely got to see quite a few faces. As I always use the reference, getting from behind the screens is always helpful. That was really eye-opening and definitely put a lot of things into perspective too. There was an immense, as many of you are already aware, very immense tech haul. Did quite a fair share of tech consumption. New tech was added to the mix where necessary. I think my clip of power banks have all been upgraded. So if you remember seeing my videos a while back where I talked about like the different power banks and which ones to use for what purpose, that group has changed tremendously. I got a whole new, I guess you can call it, not Four Horsemen. I have a new Mount Rushmore of power banks. I'll say it that way. And each of them have been very useful in various instances where necessary. Like even right now, my laptop is being used with not a power bank, but a newer source of maintaining and upholding a charge for my any electronic accessories I would have. So little stuff like that I've gotten really into. Finished the year out with a super duper random tech haul of and I'm sharing this on air, so I know I'm gonna hear a grunt about it, but I've officially acquired my 7th speaker for the year. I'm not counting I have some little small go-to speakers that I guess I can count, but I really don't look at those. I guess one that I was gifted that's like super small, but the battery is like atrocious, but it's there obviously, so you can't ignore it. I would assume. But I still got my Anchor sound core that's been with me forever. I have the JBL Charge, JBL Extreme. The Extreme doesn't really get used a lot. I'm usually using the Charge. A lot of these you're probably like, I don't know what none of this is. If you look a lot of these names up, you'll know exactly which ones they are. I have the Devoom Ditto speaker slash computer looking screen accessory. It's a speaker, but I use it very multi-purpose, and it's been helpful for some of my productivity phases. I'm saving the best for last because that's the one I just got. I have the Google Home Mini. Was gifted that on the house. Best free speaker that I don't use enough, but value having it because it is like a good little speaker to just kind of have. You want to play something real quick and let it play. I still use my JBL Go. Well, it's not the Go, but it's like it's a JBL Link, but it's the Link that you can't travel. It doesn't move anywhere. You pretty much plug it in, and wherever you use it, that's where it's used, and that's it. So those are like my main sets that I've had majority of the time. But the recent acquisition or the recent purchase is probably like going to be the speaker of choice ending the year and starting 2024, because it's definitely reminding me to listen to music more, and that's called the JBL Party Box Encore. So there are different variations of the JBL Party Boxes. A lot of them are a lot bigger. A lot of them have a lot more sound, kick out a lot more music. This one kicks out a pretty good amount of music at a very small size at a very good cost. Like, ironically, this speaker would have been the same price as my JBL Extreme that I bought over 5 years ago, but it's a better sounding speaker. And that to me is like the aha moment without being an aha moment. So I've very much so grown to love this speaker in like the last 3 or 4 days, because I picked it up on Wednesday, tested it out, put it to full use on Thursday, put it to even more full use on Friday. Today I haven't really played anything with it, played any music off of it, and I look to utilize it every day or every opportunity that I get. What I'm doing with this speaker is something I haven't done with any other speaker. And it's not a big thing, but it's a big thing, which is normally whenever I have a speaker, it automatically connects to my phone. This one, I'm not connecting to my phone. I'm only going to have it connected to my iPad. So it will force me, one, to be in positions where I'm using Bluetooth. And if I have the ability to Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, if I have the data and I have the ability to play it properly, then it will play and it'll work and do what it needs to do. And that could be a good thing. That may, and obviously that could change. Like if I'm somewhere and I'm like, look, I got the speaker, I got my phone, just kind of use it and do what you do and kind of roll with the punches. So we will, kind of test that out and see how that comes along. But very excited about that speaker. Very loud. Funny thing is, in the amount of time that I've owned it, as far as I know, I have yet to play it at max volume. I haven't been in a position to play max volume yet, but we shall see. This year has really been a lot about taking more time with self. So if you remember, or if you've heard or been keeping up, the beginning of the year, the theme was shine bright like a diamond. And there were times that I was able to shine and I valued the shining moment. But then there were also those points where I put more energy and time into dimming my light instead of being the light. And one of my friends who was on the podcast before, Carlette, shout out to Carlette and Blessing Sent, she was able to really get me more motivated to be aware of who I am and what I provide and how valuable I am. Not just to others, but to myself. And I think that sometimes for a lot of people can become overwhelming, even if the intent is to become overwhelming. We have nearly, if not 2 weeks, give or take, of the year remaining. And the message that I've constantly found myself telling people over and over is to just love on yourself. Learn to love on yourself. Learn to care about yourself. Learn to remember how much you matter to you. Don't ignore your true value to yourself. Your value to others, your value to others matter, but it doesn't matter as much as it does your value to yourself. And I think sometimes we get that lost in translation because we're so worried about how others are going to react or process our feelings or our thoughts. And in the process, we leave ourselves with like next to nothing. And it can generate a burnout. It generates stress. And we can kind of lose priority. We get off course. Things of that nature. But I gained a message today, and I'm not going to use his message specifically because that was his message, but he predominantly talked about like dedication, determination, and discipline. And a few weeks ago, I kind of was in a similar boat where there was like a component of fields that I needed to like get back to. And it generated a trifecta that I don't ever want to ignore because I think we all go through it. We're human. If we weren't human, we wouldn't be who we are. And sometimes we need to do what I've found is the 3 R's, which is reset, restart, and refocus. And I've found that I've more often times than none needed to do that in order to get to where I'm trying to go or to get through whatever it is I'm trying to get through. It's a simple process for some people, but it also can be very challenging because it's like it's you versus you. And it's you being put in a position to say, okay, I've spent so much time trying to pour and pour and pour and pour and pour and put more into people and put more into people and put more into people. But then I'm putting nothing into myself. Like consuming content, and we're going to get on, that's I'm holding that because that's, what we gain versus what we receive and what we allow to be invited in our lives plays such a big role in our day-to-day lives unknowingly. And this is going to kind of tie into my next point about the year is I've been in this very indifferent state about social media. Do I think it's a good platform or do I believe it's a powerful platform? Absolutely. Do I think it's too powerful? Absolutely. What makes it powerful isn't the business itself of social media. It's the people who utilize or are engulfed by social media. Well, Brian, what do you mean by that? What makes that such a distinguishing theory of thought? Well, there was one time where if we went online, we would get what we needed. We wouldn't really get a lot of things thrown at us, and then we'd go on about our way. Now what we've been pulled into is this genuine phrase that is used so often, but fits so clearly in our day-to-day lives of the algorithm. You don't have any control of what you watch or what you see. You're going to watch and see whatever it is that I put in front of you. And you either deal with watching it or seeing it, or you don't utilize our platform. But utilizing our platform will not only increase your screen time, but it also brings us revenue. I've been wanting to say this for quite some time. You come out better buying products directly from the seller themselves than buying them through the Amazons, the eBays, the Facebooks, the Instagrams, any other platform. But those platforms, they know TikTok. you're buying through those platforms, and I'm saying it that way, but I bought stuff through. I haven't bought anything through Amazon. I mean, not Amazon. I haven't bought anything through Facebook. I have bought a few products on Instagram, like going to the company's website and then buying it. But the only problem is because I clicked the link through Instagram, Instagram will likely or has likely gotten a cut of whatever I purchased. And sometimes I'm not the biggest fan of that, but it's one of those uncontrolled business things that happen that we really don't have any say so over at the end of the day. But yes, I've had a very huge, openly transparent love-hate relationship about social media. I know that it's useful. I know that it can get you a lot of information, but sometimes it can be so overbearing or bombarding that you really are least likely to enjoy it and more likely to just be pulled in by whatever is being told to you. And sometimes that can get very annoying because various platforms, it's never really going to be the platform that's the problem. It's the people that are utilizing the platform that become the problem. And I've seen that where, like, I had a friend of mine who she was going back and forth with folks about different things. And it happens. It's nothing against that. But if you're giving people the energy that they feel that they deserve, then they feel like they've done something or they feel like they have a control over you. And it's like, it's really not that serious. But on the same token, if someone says something, you want to be sure that you're in a space to speak on how you feel if you disagree with something. But everyone's communication isn't the same. Some people get so personal and they attack you to the point where it's like now we're talking about things that have nothing to do with what the actual post was about. And it really makes you sit and reflect and really think to yourself, like, well, dang, was it really more than what I said? Or was it something else going on that had nothing to do with what I said? And it makes you very aware, very cautious of like how to manage or utilize these platforms. Like the thing that's so funny for me personally, and many people have heard me talk about this without this being like an immense conversation. I've been in the social media world for over a decade. There are some people who have not even been using social media for 3 years, but they use social media more in their 3 years than I've used it in my 10 years. And it makes you really have to sit and wonder, like, is it really that type of a thing where you're really that into it? And it shouldn't be hitting as hard as it is, but it does. And you're like, what's gotten us to that point? I believe I talked about it before as far as like the dopamine bombarding, like you can get really pulled in without realizing it. What did I put? Because I think I did a video about this. Yeah, so I did a podcast called Social State of Mind, and it just made me, to give a backstory, friend of mine, her and I have known each other for over, give or take off and on for nearly a decade. And I would always say like, yeah, I'm going to come your way. You know, we'll link up, plan something out. We'll talk and we'll catch up. And each time I would come, wouldn't even think about it. By the time I've left, I'm like, dang, we ain't really planning out. That's on me. You know, I dropped the ball, whatever the case may be. So this year, it happened to be around Cinco de Mayo. And I was like, well, I'm in town. I'm like, I can, you know, let's meet up. Let's make something happen. Like, let's just kick it, talk about life, put some truth to paper and just kind of share some thoughts. And sure enough, like we got together, we had a conversation. She was sharing some stuff that she's working on, similar to what I'm working on. And it was a worthwhile conversation, to say the least, because it made me really look at it like we really don't utilize social media to its full potential. Like one of my personal things that I'm always pushing is, I don't think people understand. It's nothing against consuming the content, but if you're consuming more content but doing nothing with the content that you either could possibly be creating, or working on the things that you need to be working on that may not even be content based. It could just be general things that you need to work on. Then you're not really hitting the sweet spot, and you're kind of ignoring the happy medium between the two. And sometimes that can take a toll on us without us realizing it at times. So I know that's like a tangent without being a tangent, but that was something that really stood out to me this year, is really being aware of like the portions and the process involved in social media, or just being online. Like, I did it for a few days and then I kind of let it go, but I'm looking to do it again soon, where I may be breaking down each day during the week, 20-minute increments of the main social platforms that I'm on most of the time, and not being on them as long, because once you're in, you ignore other things that you need to work on, and that can become a problem. Like, it's to the point where you may have to delete an app. Like, I've shared some of this a little bit in some TikTok videos, but you may need to reduce screen time. You may need to put the phone in the bag, as I'm always talking about. You may need to, as I'm getting ready to try possibly on Tuesday, you may need to do what's called bricking the phone, where you shut out all the notifications that you don't need and focus on what you need to get what you need to get done. That's been something else that's really been big for me this year too, is like timers and just managing time. Like, I already had owned a digital timer, which is by far my favorite timer. I still use it. But then I have one that I was using for a while, but I'm getting ready to gift away soon. I got another one that I need to find it. I don't know where it is, but it's by a company named TickTime Cube. And I personally think that might be one of my favorite timers I've ever had, for two reasons. One, it has so many customizable options for timers that you can set it to whatever you want and it will do what you need with no problem. But the second reason, which is primarily why I bought it, is because it literally has built-in Pomodoro. So it has the traditional Pomodoro timer, which everyone has heard me talk about on the show numerous times, about working for 25 minutes, taking 5-minute breaks, and just getting in that habit of like going through a true 2-hour churn and burn with work and not feeling as attached to the madness or the buffoonery, if you will. Because sometimes it can take a toll on you, even if you don't intend for it to. And I've really started to like hone in on how important that is. I had another thought and it's gone, and I'm kind of mad because I really wanted to talk about it. Oh, duh. I'm using it. Another big milestone this year and someone brought this to my friend brought this to my attention today. Fingers crossed she'll be on the show next year. Not fingers crossed. She will be on the show next year. I'm putting it out there because it's just where I'm at. But she, her and I were talking, and I was like, yeah, so I got my computer. It's like a computer that I personally went out and like was able to get. And I had gotten it right before I had started the role I have now. So it made it more like getting the role I had was able to give me a bump in pay, but it was also able to like help with things that were affordable, but are a little bit more affordable than I feel like, oh my gosh, this is going to take such a hit. It's like when I'm getting paid, like that amount can come out and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's gone. But now I'm like, hey, it's gone. I'm good. Nothing to worry about, quote unquote, nothing to see here, just move forward. And I'm not taking that for granted whatsoever. I personally love this computer. I'm not a wow factor about the touch bar. I will admit the quote unquote butterfly keyboard, if that's what it's called. I like this keyboard. It's not too bad. It's not very loud. It's got like a chiclet. They call it like the chiclet feel, but it's good to type on. I don't type on it very often because most of the time I'm always using wireless keyboards. And interestingly enough, I feel like I almost should have a sponsorship with either Logitech or Anchor, one of the two. So if y'all are listening, you're welcome to join in on the madness and get me a sponsorship. That would be so great. But it's a good key. It's a good computer to have. I think the undercover selling point, even though I don't use it enough, is the trackpad on this thing is humongous. Like it literally goes from well past the space bar space. And if you've owned a Mac, you know what I mean as far as like how wide it is. Like it's a very nice size trackpad. But I've kept this computer well protected, well taken care of for the last 9 months because I got it, like I said, probably a few weeks before I started the role I got now. So I'm definitely appreciative of that by far. Talked about way more than I expected to, but this is what happens when you give somebody a mic and they make the transitions. Oh, title. You'll notice if you have or have not noticed, the title has changed a little bit. It is no longer the podcast about sports and stuff. It is now the podcast about some stuff. So it's going to be about different topics. I won't be as niche and as boxed in with the content. I'm just looking to share feels, discuss let what is going on be what's going on, and offer that area to just kind of talk it out. Whether I'm going to do a website or not for the podcast, I haven't really thought about it because I need to do a website for my business, which, let's face it, Rely on Bot did not get very much TLC this year. I'm not looking for any pity for that. That's all on me. That's my ball being dropped. That was me not doing the things that I know I needed to do, but also being aware that if I wanted to run or work better, that I got to take better care of it. And that's one of my bigger pushes for next year, is to really make sure that my website and my business get the effort necessary, even if it comes down to not being as quote unquote on the go as I'm accustomed to being. And that's going to happen sometimes. So honing in on the routines, like I've talked about numerous times, just making sure you're having that stable foundational routine or plan or process in place. And, I think the biggest challenge for most people is when you're not as reliable on it as other people. I think that can kind of blindside people, but on the same token, it's like, that's just what it is sometimes. It's just valuing it for what it's worth. So I'm definitely not, taking that for granted and not, disregarding what or where life has taken me or brought me from, or, putting me towards. So, just working through the motions and mainly keeping things intact and truly trying to do it the right way. So it's been a journey, but I'm if I wasn't intended to be on this journey, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. So I don't take that for granted whatsoever. I've really pushed to make content like the primary piece. And yeah, that's kind of where I'm at on that. There's not really much to say on that, because I think one of those things is like content is such a keyword, a buzzword that's thrown out there. But then it comes down to like, okay, are you actually creating content, or are you just talking about creating content? There's a big difference between the two. And I think that can get lost in translation at times. So working through that has been like one of my bigger objectives in so many words. And I definitely can say that the improvement has been there to be clear and intentional with that more than anything. I got one other thing I'm going to share, and then I'll share the thought or quote or message for 2024. Accountability is so golden. And I didn't realize how golden it was until I really looked around and looking at my friends and looking at the people that I've had conversations with, and how key it has been to manage and maintain the accountability with others on like what they're doing, and then making me accountable for making sure I'm doing what I need to do. And I don't under any circumstances take it for granted at all, because it has really helped me make a lot of sense of what I should be doing, what I'm forgetting to do, what I'm preaching or talking about doing but ignoring on my own end, and just being a lot more clear and concise with that. Because at times you hear the phrase like, "Hey, I need an accountability partner. I need somebody to make sure I'm going to do what I'm doing," and it's like, you don't need anybody to you know what you need to do. You just want to be sure someone's there to help you through those times when you don't feel like doing it, because it's going to happen. We're human. We're going to have those, as I like to call it, every day is not rainbows and sunshine. But it's working through those non-rainbows and sunshine days that shows us like, hey, if this is what I'm intended to do, then I got to make the changes to get to becoming that better version of me, to not ignore what's important. And I think sometimes that can get lost in translation too. Is really knowing what it's about. So taking heed to that is very key, and being more aware of it is very important. I really hope that this, when I go back and listen to this, it hopefully will all make sense what I'm saying, because I know I'm kind of circle talking, and mind you, normally when I do the year review, I usually got a notepad or I got something that's like, oh, I'm going to outline all of these things, but there was so much that went on. One of my friends who was going to be on the show, I was hoping he would be on. We still may end up doing a show, but we had an immense unpack about some things that we both experienced just through our year, and just kind of like being there and being supportive has been like the main or biggest priority. The theme for 2024. So before I give you the theme, I'm going to go ahead and share with you now the sub theme, which I use it a lot for the end of 2023, but it's definitely coming over to 2024. And that's the love on yourself. Really love on yourself and really care about yourself, and really show you that you matter, and really give yourself the affection and the time and the energy that you deserve. Because what happens is, by nature, we give this time and we give this energy to people who don't value it and I hate to say they don't care, but they don't care. Because they're too busy trying to like pull and grab and take and snatch and snipe and all of that from you. And you're giving so much to them that you give nothing to yourself. And now it's time to change that. Like, it's time to really put you, as I'm always saying this, and it's really a true statement, it's time to put you in the driver's seat. If you've been in the passenger seat for over 20 years, it's time to get out of that passenger seat. I've shared this over the last few years. I was the passenger. When I accepted that I was a driver, I moved different. When people around me thought they were the driver, I let them think they were the driver until it was time to actually be a driver. And then it's like, okay, do you really want to do this the way we need to do it? Or are you going to stick to what you're doing and think it's going to work? Eventually, not necessarily saying they caved in, but eventually it made sense, and they would get why I would say, hey, there's a better way we can do this, and let's do it this way. Not because I said we need to do it this way, but because it will be more sufficient. It'll be more helpful to the team. It'll be helpful to the process. So really honing in on that and seeing the importance of that has been helpful. The theme for 2024, and some people have already heard it. So if you're hearing it now and you're like, oh, yay, what else is new? You can skip ahead. But for those who are hearing it for the first time, the theme for 2024 is receiving grace. Yes, I know. As many times as we hear the phrase, we need to give ourselves grace, hearing it is totally fine. But nothing does justice until we are really putting ourselves in a position to receive the grace that we're supposed to be giving ourselves. It's a 2-part process. The easy part that gets talked about is we need to give ourselves grace. 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 We really need to give ourselves grace. We should really give ourselves more grace. And we understand that and we hear it. But are we really in the position to receive the grace that we're deserving of receiving? And I promise you, I am asking this in love and totality and positivity, because I personally know for a fact that it is not easy, nor is it intended to be easy. And I'm going to share this because I want to be sure that we understand this phrase and this meaning. Let's see. So the term that they use or reference it is undeserved favor. Grace is the basis for the Christian faith. We believe we are saved by faith through grace. God's grace is usually defined as undeserved favor. Grace cannot be earned. It is something that is freely given. We count on God's grace and the bridge he built in our relationship with him. That has such a huge impact on us, because it's not like you don't just go out and say, hey, give me grace. I need grace. But we have to be willing to give ourselves that opportunity of the undeserved favor that we've earned and what we've been doing and what we've accomplished and what we're working on and doing our best to become better people day in and day out. But it's hard to do that if you're stopping it or blocking it along the way. Which kind of goes to an add-on to this. An artist that pulled my attention for a vast majority of the year was Cleo Soul. Still is Cleo Soul. Like I think because I listened to it a little later than normal, but it still got in. A lot of her music was like huge on my Spotify Wrapped and my Apple Music Wrapped, because she just was given, I think I've said this a couple of times, Cleo Soul's album Gold might be one of my favorite albums I've listened to. And I didn't realize how much I needed to listen to that album, just as much as that album needed to be put in front of me to listen to it. And it made a lot of sense. I promise y'all I did not ignore exercising. That's going to be in my blog, which, by the way, I am doing a newsletter. The newsletter started last week, looking to do that as a thing every Sunday. Intending to have that up and prepared by, I would say, fingers crossed, by 9 a.m. on Sundays. So that means obviously Friday, Saturday, it's got to be up. Because Sunday, I'm personally not putting myself in a position to write a blog at 7 or 8 in the morning. I used to do it before, but my day now, it's just it's not as free of a thing as it was before. So yeah, that's mostly the pod for the year. It's been a great year. It was a great year. We got a couple more weeks left, but this has really been like a year to remember. And it's showing me that there's always work to do. There's a lot of planning and productivity that's been neglected that I did not even attempt to talk about or get into on the podcast, because that would have been another hour. But let's just say we're heading in the right direction. More planning. I guess I'm giving this away. More planning will occur for the new year. My bullet journaling went from, we're bullet journaling, we're writing, we're sharing, we're expressing, to, okay, I filled a bullet journal and then I got a second one, and the second one was like full blown neglected. And it's like, dang, what happened? Like, what are we doing here? And I'm working to improve on that next year. by finding a happy medium between doing bullet journaling, still doing like my Google Calendar, using my task platforms, but most importantly, finding that digital foundation of planning and organization and getting them all to play nice and be in the same the same vibe or the same flow. So that's what I have for you all today. I hope you all finish out the year strong, really and truly love on someone, and really allow yourself the space to like get through whatever it is you got to get through. Don't, as challenging as it is not to, please don't be so hard on yourselves. You're human. It's going to work. You just have to be patient. And I'm saying that to myself. Sometimes we're in such a rush. We need it all to happen like now. It's gotta happen. It's gotta happen. It's gotta happen. It's gotta happen. And that's not how life works. Sometimes things gotta go through things before it can happen. And for some people, that's very overwhelming because that means they have to, in so many words, relinquish control. So I want you all to learn how to work through that control battle of balance. That has been one of my adversity battles with working out. Again, could talk about that for quite a while. But in working out, I've had to learn to not be as emphatic on not doing things, worrying about what could happen if I do it and I mess up, and just doing it and trying, and not feeling like, oh my gosh, if I do this, it's really not going to look good. But in reality, a lot of things we do don't really look good, or don't look clean, or don't look pretty, and that's going to happen. So that is what I'm leaving you all with today. And I hope you all have an amazing day. Again, you may get another show from me by the end of the year. I'm not sure. But if you do not hear just me by myself, I wish you all a safe, happy, positive holidays. And most importantly, a productive, amazing, solid, strong 2024. And as my friend says this all the time, if y'all think 2023 was crazy, 2024 is going to be even crazier. And I mean that in the craziest way possible. So until then, this is the Pat signing out. BT leaving y'all with some good words, and I'll catch y'all on the next one. Peace. Truly hope you all enjoyed the show. Definitely was a lot to unpack, but I know you'll walk away with something important. As I share the end of each season, do find your way to get into podcasting if it's something you would like to do. My podcasts are currently recorded via Buzzsprout. Been very good to me. If you want to learn more about using them, definitely hit me up at thepastbtpod@gmail.com. And also the microphone that you're hearing me on is the Blue Yeti X. Have been rolling with it for over 3 years. We've been doing this ride for quite some time, so I hope someone could find this mic useful. Again, find those people who are good or helpful in what you're trying to do to be better today than you were yesterday. The primary goal is to be 1% better. Hope you all have an amazing day, and we'll be back again to do this next time.